What's going on, guys? Spen Harris, host of the Fireside Nets podcast and Twitter, brought to you by Empire Sports Media. I wanted to quickly discuss the brilliant play of two players for the Brooklyn Nets over the past few weeks. Not Kevin Durant and not Kyrie Irving. Yes, when KD's been healthy and Kyrie's been out there pretty much every night, those two have been phenomenal. They're the leaders of the team. Everybody knows that, but I want to give credit to two other guys. It could be more, but I want to, because I have the recency bias in my mind of last night's Suns game, Jeff Green and Blake Griffin. If anybody has watched the Nets this year, they know that the best dunker on this team is Jeff Green, and it's not even close. I mean, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving have all had some cool throwdowns this year. None more vicious than any of Uncle Jeff's. We have Blake Griffin on this team. Yes, he's a little bit older. One of the greatest dunkers in the history of the NBA. Not as good as Jeff Green right now. Jeff Green, yesterday against the Phoenix Suns, cocked back two insane dunks. He didn't even have a good game. He wasn't shooting well from three. He's been in kind of a three-point shooting slump these last few games. But boy, oh boy, can this man yam it. So the first one he has the ball, and he's just kind of gathers 2 feet, jumps, slams it with the left. 1, 2, boom, with the left, and he goes right past, was that Mikal Bridges. So that was the first dunk. You're like, oh shit, what a dunk. Now you have this second dunk later in the second quarter where he essentially goes from the baseline around a player, cocks it back, and then just boom, over Frank Kaminsky. I mean, vicious, embarrassing for Mikal Bridges and Frank Kaminsky to get dunked on by this guy. He's almost 34, but my goodness, Jeff Green might be the most electrifying dunker consistently. From game to game, he does this. I can't think of anybody else in the NBA right now who has had more insane slam dunks than Jeff Green. I also want to get to Blake Griffin. I've seen some up and down performances from him since he's been in net. There have been some nights where he hasn't shot the ball well, specifically from three. There's been some nights where he's looked a little slow. But what you saw last night from Blake Griffin, you hope to get out of him as many games possible. I mean, his defensive effort was probably better than any other net last night, with the exception of maybe Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown always brings it. He was great. He irritated the crap out of DeAndre Ayton. Made DeAndre Ayton's night pretty tough at certain points. DeAndre was cooking early. I mean, you had DeAndre Jordan on him, and then once Blake started covering him, he kind of stopped scoring a little bit, started looking to pass, and then there were a few possessions. So everyone saw the play where Chris Paul went behind the back and put Blake Griffin on the ground and then hit the easy layup. Everybody saw that play. That was awesome. That was also with a minute left in garbage time, basically, and I think the Suns were down 9 after that bucket, so it really was, the game was over. There were two plays back-to-back where Chris Paul tried to take Blake Griffin. Griffin got the stop on one end, and then he posted Chris Paul up on the other and scored an easy layup. And those guys, obviously, there's a history there. They're not the biggest fans of each other. You know Chris Paul wanted to win that matchup, and, I mean, he didn't. He did not win that matchup. Blake shut him down, essentially. Most of the time, he covered Chris Paul, and then he had Chris Paul on offense as well. It was a rough night for Chris Paul yesterday. The Nets bullied him, basically. Kevin Durant, anyone who Chris Paul covered scored. So that was really fun to watch. And then there was one other play by Blake Griffin. It was an and one. Basically, he caught the Suns sleeping. He caught the ball at the top of the key. Let's see here. So Shamit's going to bring it up. I'm watching the play. He gives it to Blake. Blake, top of the key. No one was on him. And the fact that he recognized that, took one hard dribble, one step, laid it in. You saw a lot of Blake Griffin laying it in, and it's funny. I mean, he's not going to slam every play. He's a little bit older. His knees have definitely more wear and tear on them than any other player on this team, with the exception of maybe Spenser Dinwiddie, because he's got a decent amount of wear and tear on his knee. He's just been so special, and yesterday was the performance you want to get out of Blake Griffin every single game, being aggressive, going to the basket, irritating DeAndre Ayton. There was actually a few plays where Griffin posted up DeAndre Ayton and scored. This guy, at one point, was a top 5 power forward in the league. He still has some of that elite post-up offensive ability left. You just hope to see it more down the stretch. So big shout-out to Jeff Green. Big shout-out to Blake Griffin. Those guys have just been very, very special over the past few weeks, especially last night against the Suns. Thanks for listening. Spen Harris, host of the Fireside Nets podcast, brought to you by Empire Sports Media.